Cool. Yep. Uh, all ready to go? Cool. So, welcome everyone. My name is Harsh, and I work for the Asia Pacific team of Hack Club. So this is Hack Club, and if someone does not know about Hack Club, it's the best place to be if you are a teenager or if you're like in your teens and you want to learn how to code. It's the best place to be. So yeah, do join Hack Club. Cool. So moving ahead, I work here. I lead the club's team for the Asia Pacific team, and today, what we will be talking about is because I come from Hack Club, I will be talking about what is the hacker culture, right? Because it's the month of Hacktober, I really want to tell the story of what were the big events in the timeline of open source. Like what were the things that really define what open source today is, and where does it actually comes from? Because what I've seen is that the best way to learn something is to firstly try to understand what is the basic philosophy behind it, where did it come from, and once you know the journeys from which something has been, you get a more complete picture of what something is. So we will be starting with a small journey from how this thing open source came into being and what was the role of hackers. And by hackers, first of all, let's just make clear what I mean by the word hackers. So by hackers, I mean people who can build stuff, um, who can try to make things do things that they're not supposed to do, and that's a definition of it. But yeah, it's usually building stuff and trying to tinker with stuff and trying to build new things on the basis of things that already exist. So that's my definition of what a hacker is. So moving ahead, uh, all of us these days know about Linux, and there's something known as Unix, and a lot of people still confuse that Linux is basically Unix, or what is the difference between Linux and Unix. But Unix is where our story starts from. Unix is where our first, like this is where our first hacker comes from. Uh, so Unix is basically it was an operating system that was created at Bell Labs. And those of you who don't know what Bell Labs is, it's a very famous labs by AT&T, if I'm right. And a lot of innovation has happened there. I guess optic fibers was also invented there in Bell Labs. So Unix was an operating system that the legend Ken Thompson wrote. So yeah, so this is the person who wrote basically uh, Unix. And the story, I guess, and if I'm right, is that his wife was on a vacation for 3 weeks and he wrote an operating system. And that operating system was called Unix. So, yeah, that's like a bit of a note there. So, basically, what was cool about Unix was that basically, let me just open my terminal. So, let's just say that there's this command line utility, like if you don't know command line utilities, that's totally fine. I'm just trying to explain what were some of the things that were really unique in Unix. Yeah. So there's this command line utility which is echo. So whatever you write on echo, it prints it on your terminal emulator. There's another this command line utility called cat. It can either print the content of some file, all the you can also use it to insert some content in a file. So I can create a file by name some file. By this, type some content inside it, and yeah, then I can simply see what is there on that file, right? I can again see catch some file. This is this content. The problem was that how do I combine it? What if I want to use echo and use whatever the output of echo is to write some content to the file, right? And this is where Unix came from. It was like pretty interesting. What it simply did was that it allowed pipes, right? So basically you could take the output of one program and use it as the input of another program. That's what we are here doing here. That symbol is a pipe symbol. So now if I try to do some file, yeah, it says hello world. So this was one of the things that you could pipe things together, but there were a lot of amazing things that happened, and it still amazes me that it was written in 3 weeks. So This is where our first hacker comes from. But now the big problem was that this was licensed. It was created under AT&T's Bell Lab. So it was a licensed thing. And how about if I want to learn how to make my own Unix-like operating system? How will I learn that? It's a closed environment, although a great product, but still a closed environment. And this is where our second hacker comes, and his name is Richard Stallman. And a lot of people might have heard about Richard Stallman. So this is him, and he made something known as GNU. And basically, what GNU is that and it was okay. So it's showing the animal, uh, GNU, but yeah, we are talking about GNU. GNU is not Unix. So its full form is GNU is not Unix, and it was an effort by Richard Stallman to create an operating system like Unix, but which is open source, so that everyone can see the code, they can improve it, they can distribute it. But at that time, the term open source didn't exist, so it was called free software at that particular time. And free software was more of a philosophical movement, an activist movement of creating software that's free in terms of distribution, in terms of seeing the source code and stuff like that. And GNU didn't had a very good Linux, a very good kernel for their operating system. Kernel is something that manages the low level resources of your computer. And this is where our third hacker comes in, Linus Torvalds. All of you know this person. Almost all of us follow him on GitHub. He's the creator of Linux. And surprise, 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 most of the operating systems that you use are not Linux. They are a distribution of GNU Linux. So what it basically means is that most of the part is basically GNU, the operating system that Richard Stallman created, and the kernel is Linux. And you use a combination of it, and you use various distributions of it. So next time, just make sure to say that I use GNU Linux. It will make you also sound cooler. Yeah, like it's the by the way factor. Like by the way, I use GNU Linux. Uh, so yeah, this is kind of like where other hackers come now. But the real power of hacker culture can be seen in something that is known as Netscape. So, how many of you know about Netscape? Like Netscape was the first internet browser, like one of the first internet browsers, something that you could use. Like it was a usable thing. So if someone does not know what it used to look like, this is what it used to look like, right? Like this, these were your first browsers. And the problem was that they were competing with Microsoft at that time, which was a giant, and they didn't have the resources as much as Microsoft did. So what did they did? They open sourced it and named it Mozilla. So they started calling it Mozilla. And cool. So uh, why did they do that? Because they now had the whole world's hacker army as their own army. So people started contributing to Mozilla, and it is kind of like the backstory of the whole Firefox thing. So that's where your whole Firefox comes from. And this shows the whole power of hacker culture, right? And this is what it is all about. Like, you share something with me, I look at it, I think how we can make it better, and I publish my changes, and you use it. And in a way, both of us benefit, because by reading your code, I come to know how it works. And by contributing back to your code, I'm making it better. And this is basically the hacker ethos. Uh, Give more than you take, right? So yeah, this is kind of like the backstory of it. So I don't want to bore you with more history lessons on open source, but I just wanted you to know where all of it comes from. So why is open source important as hackers like me and you? Why is it very important? The thing why it's very important, I'm not going to go into the philosophical aspects of it, or the moral aspects of it, that we should create a free society and things like that. What I really believe why it's very important is because it's the best way to grow as a developer. Like, it's the best way out there. So what I have seen is the most effective way to learn programming is not by watching YouTube tutorials, because they will give you a very superficial knowledge. Another way is to go to the documentation way. I myself go try to go with documentations, but another thing is that a lot of the time documentations can have a lot of stuff that's not relevant to what you want to build as of now, right? So what to do? What's the best way to do? Well, simply go to GitHub Pick up whatever you want to make, find a project that has already done that, right? So for example, if you want to make Next.js, go on GitHub. Let's just go on GitHub, Hack Club, and let's just search on V3, right? The third version of Hack Club's website. It's made in Next.js. And what's the best way to learn to code? Simply clone it. Open the documentation on one side, open the project on another side. Try to read what you're saying there. Try to relate it with the documentation. So it's basically scanning and trying to find whatever its translation is in the documentary or documentation. And this way, because this is a very good maintained code, it has very good coding practices that have been practiced here. You will learn what's the best way to write code in that particular language, a particular framework. So if you pick a good GitHub repository, the code that is there is how the top 1% of developers write the code. And if you can learn that, it's the best way to elevate yourself in, like the developer hierarchy, right? You will find out what are good function names, what are good parameter names, how to write clean code. And this is personally how I also learned how to code. I used to simply go through GitHub repositories, see which are the good projects, try to recreate them, and Google each and every word I didn't understand. And within a week, I would know all the best practices in that particular framework. And that's a shortcut that a lot of people are just ignoring. It's not although shortcut, you still have to put in a lot of effort, but that's something that's missing. And the reason why it's missing is because selling courses are highly profitable to people. So they want don't a lot of people don't want, a lot of the instructors too don't want this thing to get out, because what can they teach you apart from a documentation, right? So this is what a real hacker is. A real hacker tries to learn. A real hacker reads code like a novel, right? So yeah, that's another aspect. So now the question is that cool. So hackers are these people who believe, a lot of the hackers believe in, in this philosophy of keeping the code visible. So how do they make money? How do they even make money? That's the real question. Because at the end of the day, you do need bread and butter on your table. So how are you gonna get that? And that's a really nice question, right? Well, one way is to work for a company that does have open source projects like Facebook, React Native, and yeah, you can work for them. That's like one way to earn money. But another way is the way a lot of solo developers are doing it. And one example of such a hacker is Cinder Soros. He gets sponsorships from a lot of big companies like GitHub, Doppler, WorkOS, Strappy. And the reason why they're sponsoring him is because whatever he's making, a lot of the companies depend upon it, right? Or they really like his work. They're also trying to vouch for it. Let's just look at Substack. Substack is a developer, and he created this testing library known as Tape, right? And you can use it to test code. And because of his because his source code is open, other hackers could see how good he is as a programmer, how vast his knowledge is. And then he was invited to front end masters, and where he teaches his course. So a part of the money that he's making is coming from front end masters, where people are watching his courses, right? So that's another way he's making money. If you go on here and if you type Substack, you can see courses by Substack, right? James Halliday. So yeah, this is kind of the way people are making money. But now the question is that what if I am a very novice developer? That if what if I don't? I'm just starting out. So should I wait to get to a ninja level to be able to contribute? And the thing is, no. You can create pretty basic stuff that other people can use. And one example is this. It's a library that I made some time ago. It's called Date Time. And it might sound something pretty complicated initially, but what it simply is that it can do certain operations on dates. Like it can tell you which date is bigger than and which date is not. It can sort on the basis of dates, and it can do a lot of things just on the basis of date and time. And this is the only thing it does, right? It's a very, very small code base. So if you go here, you see it's only 6 files of JavaScript, and each file is very, very small, right? 2 lines. So this contains two lines, this contains again two lines, it's a single line file, right? It's somewhat like, so you can say that just wrote 150 lines, 200 lines of approximate code. And what is its use case? Where is it being used now? So if you go on our Asia blog, or at Hack Club's Asia Pacific Steam blog, all the sorting that you're seeing on these posts are being done with that small library. So this was something that any beginner with a week of knowledge could make, right? And we are using something like that here in our in our blog itself. It's sorting the content, and it's so beautiful that even though you could just know so little, you could create stuff that other people can use. And this is what the hacker culture is all about. A true hacker gets joy when he finds out that someone else is using the thing that he's making. And let's just look at Syndrasaurus, right? Like this person. So this person created something known as chalk. Let's just look at chalk, what chalk is, right? Cool, yeah. So this is chalk. uh well, chalk npm, right? So this is basically chalk, something that he created, and it might sound pretty complicated that he's a very big developer, so this should be something that solves a very very big problem, but that's not true. Let's just look at first of all how many uh, how many downloads does it have, right? Like, cool. First of all, there are 76,002 projects that depends upon it. So that's pretty cool. So 76, approximately 76,000 projects depend upon chalk. But what is chalk? Let's just try to see what chalk does, right? Cool. Let's just see what chalk is all about. Let's just copy these two lines of code from here. And let's just create a new file. Let's just call it chalk, and let's just see what it is. And then you will realize that even you could create something like that. It's not a very very hard problem that is solving, right? So here it is, and it's saying chalk.blue, and let's just see what it does. Like, cool, right? Yeah, so it simply printed hello world in blue. That's the only thing chalk does. It's like a chalk. It can just print things in different colors. And 76,002 projects depend upon it, right? Which is just so much interesting, right? So another thing is I could just say red, and it should print it in red, right? It prints it here in red color. So this is how you can make very, very small things that can be highly usable to people. And you can even create amazing businesses on open source projects, on open source things as hackers. A good example is Red Hat, a company that a lot of people do want to work for. Red Hat basically creates Linux distributions like CentOS, but it has enterprise Linux editions too, right? So it also provides enterprise support, and that's also a way to make money. Another good example is Vercel, right? So if you look at Vercel, Vercel has this framework known as Next.js, and basically this is an open source project. But how does Vercel make money then? Vercel has a hosting platform for the same, so you can host your Next.js projects on Vercel itself. And because Next.js is created by Vercel, most of the people want to host their Next.js project on Vercel because of this very good tight integration between the people who are providing the hosting platform and who have published it. And yeah, that's like uh, one of the way it works, yeah. And like one practical example, although if someone does not understand, it does not require a lot of economics to understand that. But another example, or personal favorite example of mine. So I was doing this small research on how profitable are open source businesses, and let's just look at it. So if you invested in Red Hat stock in 2009, between 2009 and 2019, your average return would have been 25%, right? So that's the return that you would have got annually. Let's just look at how much return Twitter would have given you: 2.93%. It's 23% less than Red Hat stock, which just tells you that how much powerful open source businesses that are being powered by, like who have open source products as their main thing to sell. It even gave a better return than Facebook stock, right? Facebook is 24.17%, Red Hat was 25%. So that just shows you how powerful open source businesses can be. uh cool. So I haven't been checking about on the comment section, so if there is one. Okay, so there was someone who asked how, but as someone who is new to programming, how can I contribute to huge projects? Well, to be honest, what I would say is that start small, right? Although one way is to do the documentation way, and there are projects like Next Vue.js. So in Vue.js, if you go on this particular repository, you will see they made an announcement for community translations. So you can do community translations for them, right? The thing is that, is this something that you want to do? If you're really interested in this work, go ahead. It does not require you to be a big programmer, and you can do that. It's very simple, no worries on that. But if you want to contribute technically, and if you're not sound as a programmer, what I would say is to start by small projects that are solving very small problems, and then try to build your way up. Because it's not actually possible to contribute to. So, for example, if you just started with something like AI, right? And if you will think that uh, you would be able to like make a PR on comma AI's open pilot, right? Comma AI is basically a company that makes, you can think of it as the Android of Tesla, like the Android equivalent of Tesla. Put their device on a car, and if it supports comma AI, it becomes automatic, right? It becomes autonomous. So if you think that you can contribute to here, if you just have spent 1 week of writing Python, that's not possible. They will not even accept your pull request, because there's a certain code quality that needs to be maintained, right? That's true. But you can start with small projects, right? Like I started with a date time, a very small thing that I could make, but it still got used. And that's how I would say, start with very small projects that you can understand, and then slowly try to build your way up. Try to Google what you don't understand on those repositories, and that's how you can mature with time in terms of uh, things that you could program. So yeah, that's one way to go ahead. Cool. Yep. So point like I'm kind of like near the end of it. uh well, yeah, this one thing, it's basically there's another benefit of provide like this another benefit of contributing to these projects, is because a lot of companies hire people from contributors on their pages. So, for example, I do know that Open Pilot is pretty open on that. So, if you make pretty good contributions here, there's a high chance that they might hire you. Like, there's a very, very high chance. So, yeah, that's like one thing. If you can contribute to pretty big projects, there's a very high probability that they would like to work with you in future. So, yeah, that's one benefit of open source as hacker, right? Like as hackers. Yep, yep, yep. And yeah, and another thing is about before we end this up, I would like to also talk about the hacker spirit. That's kind of like the main theme, but I just wanted you to see that what the hacker culture has done till this forward for the world, right? Like how people are just coming together and building stuff. And one great example of the hacker spirit could be Bitcoin. So if you go on Bitcoin, right, white paper, let's just see what it is, right? So someone by the name pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto, right, just came and write uh, they just came and write a white paper on Bitcoin. So they made Bitcoin up after the 2008 financial crisis. And yeah, it's beautiful, like they just open source the code. Everyone could see it, everyone could built on top of it, and then it just bombarded, like we were bombarded with web3 projects, Ethereum, and a lot of other super good projects in the web3 space. So this is what all the hacker spirit is all about: seeing what's happening, seeing which problems need the most attention to solve, and then solving them, and then sharing your solution with the world so that you could understand how it can be improved, right? So basically the hacker ethos is that if I solve a problem, I share it with you, but if you also follow the hacker ethos, you will learn from it and you will contribute back to it, and you will try to make it better. That's how open pilot also to some extent works. Comma AI's open pilot has a lot of contribution from other hackers, and they're getting so much contributions from people that they won't have been able to pay these many developers, right? And that's where open sourcing their project is helping them a lot. Cool. So that is kind of like the end of it. And you should check it out, check all these projects out. I don't want to make it long, so that every one of you get bored. I just wanted to make it as short as possible, like in as less words as it could be done. I am available on Twitter by the name Harsh Bajpai. That's my Twitter handle. So this is a place that's I'm super active on. So you can reach out to me here. You can reach out to me on Hack Club Slack. We have amazing hackers on Hack Club Slack, right? Like pretty amazing hackers, and you should definitely check that out, right? If you come on Hack Club Slack, you can see people building stuff, talking about amazing stuff on our Slack. Things like Linux, right? Just go and check hashtag Linux, what's happening here. Right? People just discussing stuff together. Hashtag code, our hashtag code is actually better than Stack Overflow, not gonna lie. Like you get immediate answers from people, right? Like, right? So basically, people provide you with instant feedback, and a lot of quality discussions is happening here. Like the best hackers that I meet are from Hack Club. Someone created their own cryptocurrency called Duckcoin, and they got the opportunity to pair program with Dogecoin programmers, right? So that's how crazy Hack Club is. That's how good the hacker spirit is. So yeah, let me just make sure that there's no other question lying on the chat box, and I guess then we can call it off. Where is the tab? Oh yeah. Mm, cool. Yep, yep. So, if anyone has any doubts or curiosity, they can ask in the comment section. I'm pretty open to answer that. I will be here waiting for like the past 2 to 3 minutes. It could be anything. Uh, it's totally fine if it's not related to whatever I talked about. I'm pretty open to answer anything that you want. Yep.
Yeah, Harsh, we'll wait for some time and we'll see if anyone is us. And again,
Yeah.
thanks for coming and
Yep.
taking up the session, man. Really great.
Oh yeah. Thanks. Yeah. It was my pleasure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
open source as well for me has helped me grow a lot.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
How,
So,
how how has it helped you? Like.
oh well,
Mhm.
first of all, I had no idea about open source. And then there's this club called Sayad Open Source Committee in my college, and then
Uh-huh.
every we have this flagship hackathon where you every year you do something and you get a T-shirt. So every time I should look out for projects. They are not that big, like
Mhm.
somewhere like Spotify downloaders and stuff like that. Whatever I
Mhm.
thought was cool, and then I just like, oh, what could I do to make this better, and then just do something.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Wow.
and learned a lot from it.
Oh, yeah, like that's kind of like so. I also like got my first internship and all through by learning how to code from open source. So I just used to read code like novel, like just pick up any repository, try to understand what's happening there. And yeah, if people were not open sourcing their project, that won't have been possible. Like I wouldn't
True,
have been
true.
able to. Yep. Cool. Cool. So do we have any questions or should we call it off?
I guess we can wrap it up for the day.
Cool. Oh
Again,
yeah.
thanks for coming and taking up the session. It was a
Oh
pleasure.
yeah. Yep. Thanks for inviting me. Yep. Bye. Yeah. Keep
Uh,
hacking, keep the hacker spirit alive, everyone.